We've got a lot of coaching news and rumors to get to, but really quickly, we are so close to 18,000 subscribers away. We are vinegar strokes away. So help us get there by the end of today. Hit the sub button down below for the best Falcons news and rumors all off season long. Well, just as we finished filming today's video, we got this bombshell tweet from Diana Russini. So we're actually Frankensteining today's video and putting this at the start, and then we're going to throw it back to old me, who still got some really relevant information. But Diana Russini tweeted out, the Atlanta Falcons have Bill Belichick as their top candidate, flying him into Atlanta on one of Arthur Blank's private planes last night. Dinner last night, more meetings to come per multiple sources. So, like we have been saying for the last almost 2 weeks at this point, the Falcons have their guy. It is Bill Belichick. Now it is just a question of complying with the Rooney Rule and getting some some I's dotted, some T's crossed and whatnot. But the Atlanta Falcons have their guy in Belichick. I expect an announcement to be made sometime next week once they complete 2 external minority interviews. But Atlanta, whether you like it or not, it looks like Bill Belichick is the next Falcons head coach. And now I'm going to throw it back to about 30 minutes ago, Matthew, who's got some more news and rumors to get to. Coming up on today's show, we're going to recap the latest Falcons coaching search news and rumors as the list grows, but they've got their guy. His name is Bill Belichick, but we'll recap everything coming out of Flowery Branch, and then we'll talk about Mike Vrabel getting some interest from the Falcons. And finally, could we see Kirk Cousins join Bill Belichick down in Atlanta? But first, let's get to the Falcons coaching news here. As Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, a top head coach candidate for his prowess as a coordinator and for his leadership, will interview with the Titans and Falcons for their vacant head coaching jobs. So far we have a handful of completed interviews. Aaron Glenn still kind of in that requested interviews, but as soon as that interview is completed, he'll move over to the completed interview list, which is rapidly growing at this rate. We're up to 8 names so far. Brian Callahan, the OC of the Cincinnati Bengals. Brian Johnson just completed one as well. Mike Macdonald, Steve Wilks, Ejiro Evero, Anthony Weaver. Now, for those of you keeping score at home, Ejiro Evero, I believe, is the only one that completes one of 2 Rooney Rule requirements, which is 2 external minority candidates in-person interviews. The other ones are virtual, so that does not comply with the Rooney Rule. So I think the Falcons have their guys zeroed in on Bill Belichick. They have to comply with the Rooney Rule, and I believe we're going to see Belichick be named the Falcons head coach sometime next week, maybe at the end of the week before the AFC and NFC championship game, or on Monday afterwards. But the NFL is not like the MLB. They like to give themselves some cushion in between breaking news stories, so they're not going to cuck the AFC and NFC championship games with Bill Belichick going to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, there is a potential wrench here, which is Mike Vrabel, because former Titans head coach Mike Vrabel is interviewing today with the LA Chargers, as Tom Pelissero reported. The Falcons and Seahawks are also interested in talking and meeting with Vrabel, according to Adam Schefter. I still think it's going to be Bill Belichick, as I just mentioned, but it can't hurt to have a backup plan, right? If a random opening were to pop open sometime in the next week or so, like say the Philadelphia Eagles, what if they fired Nick Sirianni out of the blue and Belichick goes, listen, Atlanta was number 1, but that was with the current openings. If the Eagles job opens up, I'm going to be going to Philly. And if that's the case, Arthur Blank better have some good backup plans here. And honestly, I'd probably prefer Mike Vrabel over Bill Belichick, but here's where we are right now, and that is the Falcons have been zeroed in on Bill Belichick from day one, and I don't think that is changing, but it can't hurt to have a backup plan in Mike Vrabel, and you also have to comply with the Rooney Rule, so they can't hire Bill Belichick tomorrow, even if they wanted to. They've got to complete 2 external in-person interviews. Now, why does Arthur Blank have his heart set on Bill Belichick? I was on the phone with my dad yesterday, and he was asking me about why do you think the Falcons are pursuing Bill Belichick so heavily? And I was just kind of thinking out loud, and I was talking about, well, if I was an 81-year-old Arthur Blank, a super-duper rich guy, and an owner of an NFL team, and I want to see a Super Bowl before I pass, I think Bill Belichick might be the best candidate short term of the open options. And then I think about these two teams here, the Arizona Cardinals and the Atlanta Falcons. Do you know what these two teams have in common? Chipper, any idea what these two teams have in common? These were the only two teams in 2023 to not play in a primetime game. That's depressing. That's sad. And if I'm Arthur Blank and I want to get out of this company right here, which is a very lonely and depressing lunch table to sit at, Bill Belichick going to the Falcons probably gets you a primetime matchup in the first 2 weeks of 2024. Don't you agree? Bill Belichick making his Atlanta Falcons coaching debut on Monday Night Football. So Arthur Blank is probably looking to make a splash. And could he go with Bobby Slowick or Brian Callahan or Brian Johnson? Yeah. Is that going to make a splash? Probably not. Could it be a better option long term? Very well could be. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here acting like Bill Belichick is going to be a surefire thing for Atlanta. But you got to look at this through the lens of Arthur Blank, an 81-year-old owner that wants to see a championship come to the Falcons. And if he can do that while bringing a splash as well, I don't think he's going to go a different direction. Now, who do you want to see the Falcons hire? Of all the completed interviews out there, let me know who you would like to see the Atlanta Falcons hire. Mike Vrabel would be an incredible hire in my eyes. I think that was a colossal mistake by the Tennessee Titans, but it looks like the Atlanta Falcons have their minds made up, and it's Billy B. Now, next up on the show, we're going to talk about Kirk Cousins potentially following Bill Belichick down to Atlanta. He recently did an interview. He was asked about Bill Belichick, and he had some pretty interesting things to say, and I want to share that with you guys. But first, I got to shout out our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. Thanks to Prize Picks, I had a blast this regular season watching some of those meaningless Monday Night Football matchups. Looking at you, the New York Jets. But with Prize Picks, I can stay locked in on the games. So take the divisional round here. These are my selections, and all you do is pick 2 to 6 players and choose more or less on their projected stats. I like the less on Jordan Love on a come-down game for the Green Bay Packers on the road against the 49ers who had 2 weeks off. I also like the more for George Kittle with those 2 weeks off at 52.5 receiving yards. And finally, I like the more for David Montgomery's rushing yards. 57.5 is not too big of a number against the Buccaneers' run defense that has been fluky this season. So if you like my selections, feel free to ride with me. You can turn $10 into $250 when you go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, I know that's a lot of information, so I did you guys a favor, and I put all that in the comments and description of today's video. Now, let's talk about Kirk Cousins potentially coming down to Atlanta, because CBS Sports recently put out an interview with an article attached to it regarding Kirk Cousins potentially joining Bill Belichick. And if Bill comes down to Atlanta, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to connect the dots here. Now, here's what Kirk Cousins had to say on joining Belichick. I'm not going to turn down an opportunity to play with a future Hall of Fame coach, but we'll have to see where March leads. It's just a lot of unknowns right now. Now, some background on Cousins here. He suffered a torn Achilles back in Week 8, which was October 29th. And we saw quickly-ish Aaron Rodgers came back from a torn Achilles. But if Kirk Cousins is, just a 9-month recovery, that would put him in line to be able to go Week 1 of 2024. Now, I used to be the CEO of Kirk Cousins jokes. Guy couldn't win in prime time. I didn't think Kirk Cousins was properly rated. But I have sort of changed my tune dramatically on Cousins. After watching Quarterback from Netflix, you might recognize a familiar voice, self-plug. I really grew on Kirk Cousins. I thought he showed a lot of leadership, and I thought he showed a lot of toughness and gutsiness and whatnot. So I've completely gone 180 on Cousins. At one point, he was sort of the punching bag of quarterback jokes, and now I've got some respect for Kirk because he has played his best football over the last 3 to 4 seasons. Now, he does turn 36 years old in August, which I know is a turnoff, but I did some of the research, and I think you guys might find it interesting. So there have been a couple of quarterbacks that have had their best seasons at the end of their careers. Now, I know Kirk Cousins is not Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Drew Brees, but look at the stats some of these guys put up at the ages of 36 or more, right? Peyton Manning, 5,477 yards and 55 touchdowns in that incredible MVP season for the Broncos back in 2013. Tom Brady at the age of 44. I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is at the same level of these guys, but I don't want you to be under the mindset of, oh, you're 36, you can't be good anymore as a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs at this age in his career. So, of the 15 different individual seasons where a quarterback has thrown for 5,000 or more yards, 8 of them were done by a quarterback who was 32 years old or older. So, if you are in the mindset of 36, there's no way he's got any good football left in the tank, the history says otherwise. Now, I understand coming off a torn Achilles is a little bit different, but Peyton Manning also came off neck surgery before going to Denver, and he still put up some great years for the Broncos, and all you need is a couple of great years. I also think it's worth noting that Kirk Cousins this year played 8 games, and he had significantly better numbers than Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke, who combined to play a full season. Like, combine their numbers. Ridder and Heineke, 17 touchdowns, and Cousins, who was out before Halloween, has 1 more touchdown and dramatically fewer interceptions than those 2 guys. So Cousins, over the last 4 seasons, like I said, has really been a top 10 statistical quarterback in my eyes. Has he gotten it done in the playoffs every time? No, he has not. But you know who has? Bill Belichick. So take a regular season king in Kirk Cousins and a playoff guru in Bill Belichick, put them together, and that might be a perfect combination for Arthur Blank and the Falcons. Ultimately, I think the Vikings are going to bring Kirk Cousins back, but I also heard a recent report that last draft, Minnesota was very close to trading up to get Anthony Richardson. So if a year ago the Vikings were close to moving on from Kirk Cousins, and since then he has gotten a year older and has a torn Achilles, maybe with a new GM in town going into his second year, third season, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Vikings decide, we're going to move on from Kirk Cousins. We're not going to pay him a big sum in free agency. And if that's the case, maybe Atlanta swoops in, because if I'm Bill Belichick, sure, drafting one of these rookie quarterbacks could make a lot of sense. But what if Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jane Daniels by March after the combine are all mocked to go top 5? And that's something we have seen very recently. Well, if that's the case, Atlanta at 8, if they're not interested in trading heaven and earth to move up to get one of those 3 guys, maybe they think their next best option is Kirk Cousins instead of a Michael Penix or a J.J. McCarthy or a Bo Nix. And if you do go get Kirk Cousins because the Vikings don't want him and your top 3 QBs are going to be gone by number 8, wow, you could take Kirk Cousins and then go into the draft with the 8th overall pick and pair Drake London, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Cousins with Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers if you really wanted to keep the hometown kid in Georgia. Or you can beef up your defensive line. Try and go get a premier edge rusher, which you have been chasing since the one-hit wonder Vic Beasley with Dallas Turner or Jared Verse. Or if you want to give A.J. Terrell a running mate in the secondary, Alabama, as always, has a couple of good DBs. Clemson's got Nate Wiggins. Like, you could do some really good overall damage to your roster with that 8th overall pick if you don't have to use it on a quarterback because you went out and signed Kirk Cousins. So pick a quarterback for me. Kirk Cousins, or if you just want to go draft a rookie. Because I understand at 36 years old, Kirk Cousins is not going to be the Falcons quarterback for the next 5, 6, 7 seasons most likely. And a rookie very well may could, especially in a rookie-loaded class. But if you're thinking short term, right? If you're thinking, let's go all in for 2024, 2025, 2026, the next 3 years, Kirk Cousins may very well be your guy. And if you're getting Bill Belichick, who is up there in the age column, and you don't want him to nurse and bring along a rookie QB because the timelines don't really match, right? You're not getting some young hotshot OC that gets to help groom and bring up a young rookie quarterback, but instead you're getting Bill Belichick, who is ready to win at any moment, maybe pairing him with a veteran quarterback like Kirk Cousins with a very talented roster that's just a quarterback away might be the best thing short term. And Arthur Blank, and this might frustrate a lot of people, might be thinking short term. He might not be thinking what's best for the Falcons in 6 to 7 years. But what can he do to just snatch a random Super Bowl in the next 2 to 3 seasons? And that might be a Cousins and Belichick combination down in Atlanta. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll keep you guys updated with more Falcons news and rumors.